We have next speaker, Bernhard Sauerteig. Bernhard is a business intelligence consultant at Z Partner GmbH, and he's been working with Sap Analytics tools for quite some time. And today he's going to talk to us about Sap Analytics Cloud with a focus on the Analytics Designer. And turn it over to Bernhard.
Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, Andrea, and hello from Vienna. I'm going to share my screen with you. Okay, so we at Z Partners specialize in SAP Business Warehouse and also SAP HANA. And as front-end tools, we have been using quite different technologies. The classics for the front-end tools is the so-called Business Explorer. I'm sure you all know it. Then later came the Business Objects tools, and now current strategic SAP front-end tool is the Sap Analytics Cloud. And today I'm going to talk about the cloud, give you a short overview, and then we're going to specialize in the Analytics Designer. All right, so that's the agenda. I'm going to tell you what SAP Analytics Cloud is about. We're going to look into the difference between stories and applications, have a short overview about connections and models, and then go into more details as for the Analytics Designer. All right, so first off, SAP Analytics Cloud, as I said before, is the strategic solution for analytics, for business intelligence, planning, predictive, and also for application design. It's provided as a software as a service tool, so it's a cloud tool for the whole intelligence enterprise, and it comes with quite a few services integrated, like connectivity service. You have the opportunity to cleanse your data. You can do some modeling. You can administrate the whole platform. You have collaboration features. And there's also support for mobile dashboarding. Everything is cloud-based, so it's to be consumed in the browser. But there's also an analytic app for iOS and also for Android. And also there's an Excel add-in. All right, so first off, the two main design artifacts there are the stories and the analytic applications. So what's the difference? The stories are more focused on self-service, so which means that key users can build their own reports. They can incorporate some widgets like charts, tables, maps, and so on. And they can add some interactivity by linking between those objects, by providing filters, and working across different pages and jumping from one view to the other. So that's it for the story. But one thing you cannot do with the story is provide a complete workflow. That's where the analytic application comes in. So this is aimed at professional designers who want to incorporate some scripting abilities. Okay, and that's what we're going to look in short. So first off, it doesn't matter if you are creating a story or an analytic application. The first thing you will need is connectivity to some backend system. And basically, there are two types of connections. So first, you could import the data. This means the data will be actually transferred from your backend system into the cloud, and the data is stored there. And the second kind of connectivity is the live connection. Here, you do not need to transfer or replicate the data, but you access it live. which means that sensitive data never leaves your corporate network or your firewall, and only metadata is transferred and stored. All right, so where can you get your data from? Of course, there are a lot of SAP connectors already provided, but also all the other big companies like Google, Amazon, Microsoft, and also SQL, OData services. You have all those connections already available, and you can use them for your stories and also for your applications. Okay, so if you have a connection ready, then what you can do is you can build a model. And the model basically is the foundation for all the stories and applications you are building on. And they provide a framework for the visualizations. So it's where you choose a connection and where you choose a specific provider. And then you can work with the data that's provided. You can clean your data, you can enhance it with additional, for instance, hierarchy information or geospatial information, and you can do some sharing, so you can reuse your models for different applications. So at this point, it's important to know some performance tips. So first off, in terms of performance, it's always a good idea to start at the source system. So if you can, tailor your source system provider to your needs as much as possible already in the backend system, and try to optimize performance there. If you need some additional logic that cannot be provided in the source system, then you can add it on model level. So here you can do some additional calculations. And it's always a good idea to filter early, do calculations after aggregations, and avoid complex formulas. Also, if you have dimensions or measures that you are not going to use, then it's a good idea to hide them in order to reduce query loads from the backend. There are two kinds of models. So you can use analytics models for read-only access, and there are also planning models if you need to write back your data. You should use planning models only when required, and prefer analytics models as they are faster. Okay, now to the Analytics Designer. This is also known as Application Design, which was the initial name before it got new name from SAP. So this is quite confusing if you're searching for information on the internet. Sometimes it's still referred by the old name. But keep in mind now it's called Analytics Designer. So what is it? Basically, it's the successor of Lumira Designer. Or maybe you know it by the previous name, Design Studio. And it's a design environment to build your complex applications and dashboards for all kinds of use cases. Everything works within the browser, and the whole design environment is shared with stories. So you can reuse some of the elements that you have been using in stories also for your applications and vice versa. The core feature of applications are is the scripting functionality. So you have completion, code completion. You have a value help to your disposal. Scripts, you can use scripts, and you can bind those scripts either to a widget event or to a global script, which is kind of something similar to a function model. The code itself is JavaScript, but it's not full JavaScript, it's a limited subset. And also the kind of language is a little bit different from regular JavaScript because it's strongly and statically typed, meaning that your variables are not dynamically cast at runtime. So you need to be very specific what variable type you want to use, and you need to explicitly declare all your variables. You cannot use any external JavaScript libraries within application or Analytics Designer. but you have some standard Java objects like a math, date, number, array, and string available. But one thing you can do, you can make use of the SDK and create your own widgets. And by doing so, you can make use of all the JavaScript libraries available. So within custom widgets, you can use all the features to your disposal. Okay, so if we compare the old Lumiere Designer with Analytics Designer and also with Story Builder in terms of widgets, you can see on the left side of the screen how it looked in Lumiere Designer. And if you compare to the middle screen, which is Analytics Designer, you can see that there are not as much widgets yet. But basically, this is due to different styles. For instance, if you look at the filter, now in Analytics Designer, you have just one widget for the filter, which is called filter line. And before in Lumiere Designer, you had 3 different styles. But basically, all the core functionality you need is already there in Analytics Designer. It's still a very young tool. It's constantly getting new features, and I'm sure also the widgets will be extended over time. If you compare Analytics Designer to the Story Builder, you can see that you have basically all the widgets from the stories available in Analytics Designer as well, and also some additional functionality. Okay, then now for the direct comparison with Lumiere Designer and Analytics Designer. So if it comes to source systems, the classic Lumiere Designer could only access BW, HANA, and Business Objects universes. Of course, you could add your own connectors, but you had to do the coding yourself. On the other hand, in Analytics Designer, you saw the little picture before, so you have a lot of sources already offered by SCC, which you can utilize. About the data source concept, this was very flexible in Lumiere Designer. So for instance, you could at runtime choose to bind a certain data source to another object. This is one thing you cannot do yet with Analytics Designer, because here you need to specifically assign a certain data source to one widget, and it stays that way during runtime. Also, one thing that was very nice in Lumiere Designer, you could bind a data source directly to certain widgets like drop-down or radio buttons. In Analytics Designer, you cannot do this. In Analytics Designer, you need to populate the values yourself via manual scripting. Yeah, about the widgets, you already saw that in Lumiere Designer, there was a higher number of widgets with different styles, while in Analytics Designer, there are fewer widgets, but there are some quite new ones, like the R visualization, which is quite a nice and interesting feature. In Analytics Designer, it's native JavaScript, which is executed directly in the browser's engine. In Lumiere Designer, this has not been the case. There was some kind of middleware engine, which was a little bit slower. So that's a plus in Analytics Designer now. As for the integration, in Lumiere Designer, you could jump back and forth between BW and BO applications. But integration otherwise was kind of limited. While in Analytics Designer, this is already designed for all kinds of communication with a different variety of web-based tools. So for instance, you could embed an Analytics Designer application within another web page, and those web pages can communicate with each other. You can also make use of OData calls and something like that. About the infrastructure, so Analytics Designer is a cloud tool, and as such, it's always up to date. On the other hand, Lumiere Designer, you had to do your updates manual. All right, so now when it comes to performance, there are a lot of factors which can have an impact. If you look at the graphics on the right side, so you see there's a lot of data transfer and processing going on. Depending whether your cloud is stored in the corporate network or in the cloud, you will have some processing here on the right side. Then of course there is some data transfer through the network, and everything is put together directly on the user's machine, and all calculations or renderings are done through the browser and the JavaScript engine. So you can imagine that the local PC resources do make an impact when it comes to performance. Of course, the more CPU power you have, the better. Also, the browser you are using does make a difference. So it's always a good thing to use an up-to-date browser. SAP recommends Chrome. Yeah, and as well, the same goes for all the other entities we have here. So the corporate network does make an impact. The backend sizing has an impact on performance, like, for instance, how many parallel processing is possible. And of course, main performance aspect is within the model and story or application design. So one thing that's important to know from a technical perspective, Google Chrome has a limit of 6 concurrent connections to a specific host. And for you as an application designer, basically that means that Chrome can handle only 6 parallel widget calls at a time. So if you have a lot of widgets on your screen, then basically the application can only process the first ones, and then only if they are finished, calculations can go on for the rest of the application. And that's why SAP recommends that you should use a maximum of 8 to 10 widgets or graphs per page. Of course, there are a lot of situations where you require more widgets, and then it's a good idea to split this between different pages or between different apps. So how can you measure the performance? So for one thing, you can use the Chrome development tools, which you can access via F12 key. And you also can use some models that are provided within Sap Analytics Cloud by SAP. And with those models, you can build your own reports telling you which stories or which applications are frequently used, what are the runtimes, what are the average usage statistics, and so on. So what should you do and what should you not do? First, it's a good idea to limit your result sets. So you should always prefer charts over tables if possible, because charts are more aggregated and pull usually less data from backend side. And if you require more detailed drill down, there is a feature, it's called Explorer mode. So it's more or less a link. If you click on a chart and you have this Explorer mode enabled, another view will pop up with a table, and you can drill into details, as much as you like. And always use an aggregated state for the initial view so that the application will start up faster. As for the widgets, I already told you, it's a good thing to limit the number. Also, it's best practice to reuse the widgets if possible. So you could place some widgets in the header or in the footer, or in Application Designer, there's even a method, it's called move widget, where you can bring your widgets from one page to the other during runtime. A rule of thumb would be, if the user has to scroll a lot, then the application or story is probably not very optimal when it comes to performance. So if there's a lot of scrolling involved, you should think about splitting up your screen content, and you can use hyperlinks to jump to other detailed pages or to other applications. Less is more, which means only write the program code that's really necessary. Otherwise, leverage features that are already there out of the box. For instance, if you are doing some responsive design, so which means the application should dynamically fit the screen size, Previously, you had to do this with customized coding. And now there is a component, it's called the Flow Panel widget, which provides this feature out of the box without coding. So you should make use of such new features. Also try to keep images small, because over time, usually when you load a lot of images, they will be packed within the application in the background. And even if you do not use them or do not see them, they slow runtimes down. There are some technical optimizations, like the query batching and the lazy loading. So basically, those are two buttons. You simply have to activate them. And query batching will try to send as little queries to the backend as possible. So it will try to combine several requests and just send it only once. Then there's the lazy loading. This will make sure that when you start up an application, only those parts that are visible are loaded initially, and the rest is done in the background. Okay, now I want to provide a slide showcase. And this is called Soccer. It's an application that we at Sap Partner have been developing. What is it? It's meant to be a soccer championship bet game. We had the first initial version we built was, I think, 5 years ago. We built it with BW technology. It was using integrated planning and Design Studio as a front end. And over the years, we have migrated this tool to always use the latest technologies. So why have we created this application? So first of all, to do something fun with SAP for once. It's a very good internal learning experience for us. And also one thing that our customers ask a lot is about migration from old technologies to new ones. So this was a very good migration path test. And the current version that I will show you today is still in development. It was meant to be used for the championship 2020. Yeah, hopefully it will be ready by 2021. Who is Soccer for? Basically for everybody who is interested, so for all our customers and friends. And I would like to take the opportunity and invite you all, if you're interested, to see the final version of the application and take part in the bet game, then please contact us. You will get a login, and as soon as the soccer championship starts, you can use the tool. Okay, so let me jump into the live demo. So now I am within the SAC Cloud. And first I will go to my files and to the application folder, which is here. So this application makes use of 4 different models, which you can see here. So 3 models are specific for read-only access. We use them to get some statistics. And 1 model you can see here is a planning model. So we use this to make our entries. So if the user wants to place a bet, the live planning model will be used. Okay, I'm going to start up the application design view. And first I will directly start the application so that you can see how it looks during runtime. Okay, that's it. So first there's a little welcome page. And the main logic is here within this My Bets tab. If I click here, you can see the different soccer games that are supposed to happen. Of course, those are only fictional dates and times we have entered here. But what you could do here is you can see the actual results. And you could also enter your tip. So if the game has not happened already, you could enter your old tip, and you will see it's immediately saved to the BW backend. Also, there are some statistics. So currently only a bunch of my colleagues are taking part in this demo application, and it will show you who's currently ranked best. And also there are some statistics about the games themselves. So which country has the most points, which has the best goals ratio, and so on and so on. Okay, so I will jump back to the design environment to show you how this is set up here. So on the left side, you have the layout where you see all the widgets and how they are organized. Right. So I scroll down a little bit to the bottom. Here you see some global variables that can be defined once and used within the whole application. And also there are some global script objects. It's like function modules you can reuse within the application as well. So I told you there are 4 different models that we're using. And those 4 different models are bound to tables. So for instance, you can see here is a table widget. It's grayed out, meaning it's not visible here. It's somewhere in the background. It's only some kind of helper object which refers to our planning model. And the same goes for the other tables. So here you can see, for instance, there is a table with the user data. It's bound to a specific model, and another table for the group data bound to another model. As for the design environment, you can click on a widget, and on the right side you have a designer button where you can choose the properties. So you can alter the layout. You can say, should this be visible or not? You have some different properties depending on the type of object. And now let's have a look at the scripting itself. So first thing is the on initialization event that will be triggered when you start the application. So what logic is in here? There's simply display of the username, which will be read out and displayed. Then we set some variables. And the first thing we will do, we will start basically this read and fill function module here. And read and fill, this will actually read my values from the backend and populate all the widgets that you saw for the front end. So all the date and time informations, the team information, and everything will be put together. We also load dynamically some flags, graphics, and we check if the date is already due. Then the input field will be set to not editable or vice versa. Then whenever we move within the application, the scripting of the tab will be triggered. And here, basically we have a move panels method. So I told you it's a good thing to reuse the widgets. And basically we have here 8 different panels. One panel is essentially this box here with the game information. We have 8 panels, and those 8 panels we designed only once. And if you click on another tab, we use the move widget method, which you can see here. And during runtime, we bring those widgets simply on another tab and repopulate it with actual data. So this helps to speed up quite a lot. Whenever you enter a tip, another script object will be triggered. And this is here. This is this write publish function model, which basically reads out all the master data first. Then it puts together a cell definition. And for this one specific cell, which you want to enter data, it will submit the data to this hidden table. And If you execute this publish method, then the planning will be saved directly to backend. Okay, that's it for the application and for the SAC overview from my side. Just one final word. From SAP, there is a nice API reference. So, for instance, if you have a widget and you want to know, okay, which methods do I have here, which events are possible, you can always look here. And also there's a developer handbook with a lot of examples how the scripting needs to be done. So you can also, it's also a good thing to look in here, just review the examples and then you can copy and paste the code for your usage. Okay, so that's it from my side. Any questions?
So, let me just check the chat. Tommy, will you check the chat? So I have a first question. So I saw your comparison between the two tools, between the predecessor, I think it's the design, the Lumira and the Design Studio. So is it easy if I know Lumira very well? Can I easily just switch to the Analytics Designer, or does it take a lot of effort?
I would say yes, as I have done myself. The previous version was coded in Lumira Designer. The problem is you cannot reuse your Lumira Designer code one-to-one in Analytics Designer. So you cannot copy and paste everything because mainly for one thing, there are different widgets. For another thing, the concept of the data sources is completely different. In Analytics Designer, we have models which are bound to one specific widget. And in Lumira Designer, you had your data sources, which you could also bind, but do it flexible during runtime. This is not possible in Analytics Designer. Therefore, a lot of coding you had before would simply not work. But if you take those differences in account, I mean, it's regarding the scripting, there are not. It's not too different from each other. So I'm sure if you know Lumira Designer, you will have a quick start in Analytics Designer.
Okay, thank you.
So there are currently no other questions, but I have a question for the live connection and the input connection. So the live connection means that you use your data from the S/4HANA system for the presentation.
Yes.
Is there any aggregation layer in between, or are these all the standard application tables?
Yes. So in between you have the model. So basically you need to create a model, and within the model you say, okay, this is my connection to S4, for instance, and you have your data source, and then within the model you can do additional adjustments. So you can leave out some columns, some measures if you don't need them, or you can add additional logic. So that would be your layer in between the backend system and the frontend system. So everything goes into the model first.
But then directly to the system, to the database in the system, for example, S/4HANA.
Yes. Right.
Okay.
And depending whether it's a live or import connection, yeah, I mean, import connection, you would work within the data everything would be right into the cloud, and live you access directly the backend system, no replication needed.
So I think there are, Tommy, did you check the chat?
Yeah.
Are there more questions? No.
Maybe I could ask one thing. Bernhard, could you put up your slide again with all the great links for resources?
Sure.
And where do we have to send an email in order to get access to your Zocker demo?
Sorry.
Maybe we can put that link directly in the chat for everyone.
Sure, that would be great.
Email
So it would be this dedicated email address. So soccer@sappartner.eu. So please feel free to contact us if you have questions about the applications, or maybe some feedback on features still to add. We will work on this, and as soon
feature requests are open. Huh?
Yes, feature requests are open, of course. We're also always happy to get some feedback.
Oh, that's very cool. It's a great idea.
And also there are some prizes to win. So if you're the best at the end of the tournament, there are some merchandising items and some stuff like that.
Sounds great. And
so now I have a question from the chat. So to access the backend data, are there still BW extractors used in the S4 system?
W extractors. So the data that we have been using within the application already resides within BW. So there's no connection from S4 to BW. It's already in BW. But what we do, so if we look at the architecture, basically we have all the information in ADSOs on BW backend side. We have composite providers built on top of it and BW queries. And for the planning side, we have planning functions and aggregation levels. And in between, we have the BPC embedded tool. So this is responsible for, for processing all the values that have been entered. So that's the model we use. No S4 connection here.
Okay, yeah, for this application, but for the daily use, are there still any BI extractors, BW extractors, or do you access the S4 HANA tables directly?
Well, I would say this depends a lot on your architecture. You could go directly to S4 system with SEC. Of course, you can do this. But you can also go through BW system and connect BW system to the S4 system. I would say it depends on your needs, on performance aspects, on data replication aspects. So it's entirely up to you how you want to use the tool.
Okay, so I'm open and just choose the right tool for my needs. Great.
Yes. So it should also be possible to have access to the CDS views or to the new CDS views.
Yes, it's possible. Mm-hmm.
Okay, because there was a question from Bunzel. Okay. So I think
there's another question here a little further up in the chat. For the live connection, is it possible to anonymize sensitive data?
Sorry, for the live connection, is it possible to do what?
Anonymisieren.
Anonymisieren, genau.
Anonymisieren, yeah, okay.
Anonymize. I'm not sure, haven't tried this yet. I mean, of course, this feature is possible, but I'm not sure if you can do it directly within the model. You may have to do it already on the backend side. But I'm not an expert in that kind of feature. I never have been working with it. Sorry.
It's very interesting.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Bernhard.
Thank you.